All right, I want to welcome everyone to our session, okay, the Sales Edge and Business Chat Room. And so, to everyone listening in or watching, welcome. And, on today's session, I want to talk about cold calling. So, what is the purpose of cold calling, right? So, cold calling has a bad reputation, right? It's a disliked activity of salespeople and sales professionals. And when I started out as a young salesperson, I heard a lot of established professionals saying they wouldn't recommend it, right? They often suggested networking or referrals from clients as a way of generating new business. Now, that assumes a reputation that can take years to build. It also reinforces an ecosystem which businesses only ever work with people they know. And as anyone who follows business can tell you, today's unknown online business could one day evolve into e-commerce business and generating leads and maybe where they're already. Okay, but cold calling, cold emailing, or even direct mail may help companies and sales professionals get their foot in the door. And the reason for this is because hardly anybody is doing it. And if you do it well and you're professional, it makes you stand out from everybody else. And with other kinds of marketing, it's like we kind of wait for the prospects to come or the leads to come in, and so it's a very reactive or waiting game, right? But cold calling is a proactive approach. You see, businesses often sit around waiting for inbound leads, and cold calling can be more proactive. It can be a more proactive approach that helps build initial in relationships with qualified leads and prospects. Maybe the kind of customers or prospects that you like to work with, at some point in the future. All right. Um, so what did I learn that worked, and what should you avoid? So I've been cold calling for probably 30 years. All right, and I'm going to share with you practical cold calling tips to help you close more deals. All right. As I mentioned, my cold calling techniques are a result of 30 years of experience, and between all the closed deals and all the people that have hung up on me, I've gained a good amount of insight, in something that gives me the confidence to share these tips with you. Now, the first thing you have to do, if you're just calling numbers, then you probably don't need to do this, but you have to take it a step before you just call a bunch of numbers. You have to make sure that you do your homework before you cold call. And the minimum that you have to do is at least the category of companies or the industries that you're going to call on, right? Now, I'm not suggesting that you approach people that you know nothing about and go for the hard sell, like like all the cheesy sales movies, like Wolf of Wall Street or other movies like that. What I'm saying is that you should do the minimum homework. All right, making sure that if you approach somebody by phone, you've got a good sense, if not who they are and what they do, then at least what you're able to offer to them. Okay, knowing what they're working on, especially in higher level cold calling, knowing what they're working on and what sort of trends or circumstances might affect their industry, affect their company, affect their position, affect their revenue, reputation, whatever it is, you need to do that. And please, for sure, you got to spell their name right, or at least pronounce it right. All right. The next is, don't be a time waster. You've only got a few seconds to make an impression and stand out. So don't waste it. Don't start your cold call with an annoying question or an obscure riddle. This is cheesy and it's so old school. It might have sounded great, a decade ago or 20 years ago, but in real conversations, it will just irritate your prospect. And don't be boring. Don't try to sell something that your prospect already has. If you're sending a pitch by email, don't make it generic. Make it relevant, make it timely, and make it valuable. And you have to talk less and listen more. The 80-20-20 rule, the Pareto principle, where 20%, where 80% of your results come from 20% of your effort, right? And take this rule and apply it to your conversation. Talk less, listen more. Now, when I was starting out, and maybe sometimes in the last few years, because we all fall back into habits where we like to talk a lot, right? When the cold calls I was making, or my team were making, or are making, and ended up in a door, or being slammed in the face, or they just hung up, it more often than not, it was because I was talking about myself too much, or talking about something else that didn't interest them, that didn't affect them. So if you're genuinely interested in a prospect, that's the key to finding a connection. Asking a friendly question or starting with a genuine interest in the business may help you cut through any of the initial hostility, because you will get it, right? You need to see the people you talk to as human beings, and for them, very important, for them to see you in the same way. So start by listening, take an interest in them, and they might surprise you, and they might just return the favor. Now, I remember several years ago, I had a company cold call me almost every other day for a month. And each time I explained I wasn't interested, I couldn't use their services. They wouldn't take no, which is fine. All right. So I emailed the sales director. Actually, it got turned over to the sales director. I emailed the business to ask them to remove my number from any future calls. And their sales director, he ended up getting the email. He replied, and he signed off with a note, telling me that this is what we do, and we'll still keep calling, but legally he had to stop, right? But I never replied to that email, and I've mentally closed the door to that particular company for all future inquiries from these guys, right? So you got to know when to stop, and I'm not saying know when to quit. All right, you got to know when to stop, and stopping and quitting are two different things. Because if you stop, it could make it possible or easier to come back at another time at some point in the future. So cold calling isn't pleasant, at least not when you're starting. And truth be told, after 30 years of doing this, I still don't find it pleasant at all, but it's something that has to be done. And with some of these tips that I share with you, you can remove the lack of confidence, the lack of skills, and actually convert leads into successful sales. And you're gonna come across so many cold calling techniques, from so-called gurus online. Some of them will say cold calling is dead. Some of them say pound the phone 8 hours a day. And the foundation of some of the things that they're saying is actually based on the tips that I just shared with you. All right. Um, be a good listener and know how to part ways without closing the door forever. And cold calling can seem daunting, and you have a list of numbers to call each day, and you may find that your calls go to voicemail more often than to an actual person, and you cannot seem to get someone on a call, even less setting up an actual appointment. But you try to call more people and you get the same results. When I first started cold calling, I struggled to get prospects on the phone. Um, Even recently, we're struggling to get people on the phone because of all the situation that we're going through. But I work through my numbers and have some success, but not a great amount of success. Okay, so um, when I learned how to do this, I kind of changed my approach. And for several months, what I did was uh, the result was that when I changed my approach, what I did was I managed to book 5, 6 to 10 appointments each day, and I managed to do it after learning. these three cold calling golden rules. And I'm going to share these golden rules with you, and you can use them to help meet your goals. Okay. The first is get a yes, yes, yes. And this originates from some a rather famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which the basis of the book is it teaches you how to connect with people by being more likable. And we all like people who are likable, right? So getting a yes, 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 I call it the yes set, is about reaching agreement from the other person. And it's not about tricking the prospect into saying yes, about asking questions that are not related to what you're calling about. And you want to obtain agreement on key principles that are relevant to whatever you're talking about. Start with small things that are principle based, easy conversation, easy questions, and then build up on those. And eventually, what you want to do is you want to create a shared understanding or a viewpoint by agreeing on the things that you have in common. And most prospects you call are going to say that, I'm happy with the service or the products that I have, my supplier's okay. So you can begin with that. Okay. So if, let's say, for example, you have insurance, right? Let's say if you're selling insurance, you begin by saying, you take the objection away. I'm sure you have an insurance plan that you're happy with, or I'm sure that you're happy with your supplier right now, or your vendor, or your current products or services. And your prospect will most likely agree with you, but because you understand their position, they will feel more comfortable with you. Then you move the conversation along using questions about things that you will continue to agree on. For example, can we agree that time is money and that anything is possible? Do you think it might be possible there is a slightly different or better insurance offer out there? Okay, once you have the prospect agreeing with you, you begin to transition the process of setting up an appointment with them, because that's what we really need to do. Okay, it's important that you do not ever disagree with the prospect, because this, it'll look like you're arguing with them, or you're trying to push them down. You can acknowledge their objections and agree with their viewpoint, but maybe not their conclusion. Okay. The next one, number two, cold calling is not a numbers game. Okay, if, let's say, you call 80 to 100 numbers a day, and your technique sucks, all right, and you get lousy results, does it mean that instead of calling 100 a day, you got to call 200 now? Because what will happen is that your results suck with 100 calls, and you get no results. What makes you think it's going to get better when you make 200 calls, right? This is a belief that the more people you call, the more appointments you'll be able to set up. And this doesn't translate to the reality of the world that we live in today. Now, I want you to think about your own workday. You might be meetings in the morning, getting lunch, or running errands during your lunch break, taking a family member or your kids to a doctor's appointment in the afternoon. And, for most of us, the reality is that we're only at our desk, or actually working for, several hours on any given day. Now, if we keep this in mind, if I only call once before moving on to the next number, it's rather unlikely that I'll connect with the prospects on that one single call. But if I missed you in the morning, if you're not at your desk in the morning, I may be able to reach you in the afternoon. And right now, on my schedule for the last several years, I schedule only 1 to 2 hours a day for my cold calling, and I do it consistently. All right. The key is quality over quantity, and you can call fewer prospects each day. And instead, what you do is you call those prospects more often. And you could realistically call each number 2 to 3 times a day for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, to try to get in touch with them. Okay. Um, as an example, I was making 30 to 35, possibly 40 calls in that 1 to 2 hour period. And what I would do is I would end up with 5 or 6 scheduled appointments, whether it was in person or whether it was a follow up call on the phone. Okay, I would encourage you or rather, I would discourage you from leaving a voicemail because this gives them, um, the ability to, or the decision whether they're going to return your call or not. Okay. In fact, for me, I would possibly, probably never leave a voicemail. All right. Okay, number three, you can sell more to prospects who don't have a need. Okay, now this you have to take with a grain of salt. Also, all right, most people fail at cold calling because of this one mistake. The rule that we've all heard is that you must first identify a need when talking to somebody on the phone when on a cold call. This outdated way of thinking has you focusing on prospects who have a clear and demonstrated need. Okay, when you do this, you're limiting your potential prospects to a small percentage, especially in a business-to-business market. This is because 80, 90% of the prospects that you talk to will tell you, I'm happy with my supplier, I'm happy with my results, I'm happy with the product or service that we have right now. So they clearly do not believe that they have a need. They're happy with what has worked in the past and what is working right now. And if you're only focusing on those who have a need, it can make your cold calling efforts extremely frustrating, and it's almost like trying to find a needle in a haystack. People are used to what they have until they're shown something different, until they're shown they can get something better. So don't put aside, the prospects that do not have a clear need. Sometimes they might just be your best target. Okay, so I've shared, the frustration of cold calling. I've shared several tips on how you can make your cold calling efforts more productive and more effective. And what I would encourage you to do is, develop a script, that works for you, and continuously practice your script and follow your script, especially on the first call. All right, and I want to thank you for watching or listening to this session, the Sales Edge and Business Chat Room, and this is a weekly session. And I want to wish everyone stay safe and blessings for all of us. And I will see you on a future session. Thank you.